600 years before Christ was born, the Old Testament prophet Habakkuk had a heated conversation with God, pouring out his complaints about the suffering and struggles of God's people. Israel had not recognized how far they had drifted away from God, so God gives clarification to the prophet. Look at the proud. They trust in themselves, and their lives are crooked, but the righteous will live by their faithfulness to God. Paul quotes this verse several times in the New Testament, saying, "The righteous will live by faith." Habakkuk teaches us what it means to live by real faith. Who hasn't wondered, what on earth is God doing? Some have given up on God and the church and the family of God because of suffering and pain, disappointment, and unanswered prayers. Poor Habakkuk was furious because it seemed that the God of Israel was not behaving as a loving God. Lives are in danger, provision is lacking, and Habakkuk addresses his concerns over the fact that God will use the Babylonian Empire to execute judgment on Israel for their sins. Perhaps you can relate to Habakkuk in his complaints to God. Maybe you need to call out to God, "Where are you, God? What are you doing in this situation? What you're doing doesn't make sense, Lord." Habakkuk teaches us that we can come and pour our hearts out to God. We, like Habakkuk, need to learn that God is our Father, and we could bring our confusion, our hurt, and our pain to Him.
Well, Happy New Year, everyone. Wow, we're already almost through January. Can you believe it? I hope these few weeks of the new decade have been good to you. 2020, I don't know about you, but I have a hard time wrapping my mind around 2020 already. Now, next week is the Super Bowl, and kickoff is planned for around 5:30 p.m., if anyone cares, that is. But just wanted to mention in case your group wants to adjust their meeting time so you can all watch the big game together. Now, here's a much more important announcement. Our big annual event at church is coming up soon, our Missions Gala. Why don't you, as a small group, make a plan and see if you can get everyone attending on Friday or Saturday, February 21 or 22. And even better still, let's all try to invite at least one person out. If everyone in our groups invited just one, we wouldn't have enough room for everyone. So can you imagine if we had to add a third night? That would be awesome. Now, today we begin the first in a three-part series in the book of the prophet Habakkuk. This is a short prophetic book of only 1,438 words. It's different from the other prophetic works of the Old Testament. It's not aimed at Israel and the Israelites as much as it's aimed right at Habakkuk's own heart. He shares his prayers and his findings with us in this book, and in doing so, he teaches us what real faith is. So buckle up for an exciting 3 weeks of discussion. Pastor Allen will be guiding us through some great teaching on what faith is and what it is not. This will be good to hear because there is a lot of false teaching out there about faith. So over the next 3 weeks, I pray each of us will develop a clear understanding of what true faith is and hopefully get a much deeper glimpse of our amazing Lord. Okay, is there anyone at one point or another who hasn't wondered, what on earth are you up to, God? This was Habakkuk's question. Now listen to these opening lines in Habakkuk chapter 1. How long, O Lord, must I call for help, but you do not listen? Violence is everywhere. I cry, but you do not come to save. Must I forever see these evil deeds? Why must I watch all this misery? Wherever I look, I see destruction and violence. I am surrounded by people who love to argue and to fight. Now, can you hear the desperation of Habakkuk? Can you hear the confusion and his dismay? Habakkuk is utterly disillusioned and disappointed in God. Perhaps that's you today. You wonder, where is God and Why isn't he answering my prayers and helping me? Well, the good news is that as serious Christ followers, we will have clear answers to these questions. We will begin to understand what it means to walk in faith and to trust that God is sovereign over every situation. Now, in the meantime, Habakkuk teaches us to ask God the tough questions. This is what is wrong with the faith with so many people. They just refuse to wrestle with God. You will remember that Jacob wrestled with God and he survived and he was transformed into a new man because he did so. Now, by chapter 3 here, you will see that Habakkuk was transformed into a new man because he too wrestled with God, asking hard questions. So let's not be afraid to ask God these questions that overshadow our hearts and our minds. We know that God loves us and we know He is 100% good. So we can come to the right conclusions if we know how He is and how He works. Okay, enjoy your discussion here today, and hopefully through Pastor Allen's messages, these sessions, the learning, the discussions, this will be the beginning of some new discoveries and revelations from God for all of us. Habakkuk was transformed after he asked God the tough questions, and I pray each one of us will also be transformed and made more like Christ. So let's wrestle with God and ask Him some tough questions.